Please get ready for the entrance of King Priam of Troy.
Wee.
Hello, I'm King of Troy. I'm here to answer any questions you might have surrounding the recent war between the Trojans and the Greeks.
Can you describe what happened after the death of your son Hector? How did you react to these events?
Well, at the sight of Hector's death, I was stricken with grief. It was a horrifying event to witness, as he was my favorite son. It broke my heart, and it is still hard for me to talk about it because it was so emotional. After I saw Hector take his last breath, I was in dismay. He was an honorable warrior with pride and acted with the well-being of the Trojans at heart. He was courageous in taking on the merciless Achilles, but maybe in this instance his pride was too much. Then I asked myself, who will lead the Trojan army? Are we going to lose the war after the loss of our greatest warrior? Yet all of this was before I saw that Achilles did to Hector's body. He used the girdle adjux given to Hector in order to attach Hector's corpse to his chariot. He slit Hector's heels and slid the girdle through them. As if it was not enough, all of the Greek warriors stabbed Hector's body repeatedly. Did they have no respect? I could not fathom so publicly displaying such a direct insult to the gods, especially after they had helped Achilles to win the duel. I looked at Achilles in contempt as the atrocities he had committed towards my son. Then he had the nerve of riding around the walls of my great city with Hector's dead corpse attached to his chariot. Achilles' arrogance has no limit.
Priam, how did you feel about Achilles? How did you feel about how Achilles handled the entire situation concerning the clash between Achilles and your son Hector? Did your opinion of him change?
I thought that Achilles handled the entire situation concerning the clash very immaturely at the beginning. He did not need to be chased around the city. That foolishness is for children. Once my son was slaughtered unjustly, Achilles proved my earlier assumption of his childlike ways because he would not give his body back. My family and I had been mourning, and all we wanted was to see him. I decided that I must make one last attempt to get my son back, and I had caught the wind that Zeus was enraged over Achilles' treatment of Hector's corpse. I also heard that Zeus had commanded the return of Hector's body to me. I decided to journey the Greek camp to see if Achilles would follow through. After I pleaded to him, I saw a side of Achilles I had never seen before. He wept for his own father and his dear friend Patroclus. We had a very scholarly discussion on fate. We went through a very awkward dinner, and at the end, he agreed to return the body and provide the amount of time that was needed for the funeral before resuming the war. My final view of Achilles is that he was very immature and a merciless warrior, but not a heartless man. He has many different sides to him. He can be compassionate, but is more often than not rude, arrogant, and wicked.
Priam, how did you feel as you witnessed Hector standing outside the gates, waiting for his certain doom?
When watching Hector stand outside the gates of Troy, I was sad because my favorite son was standing there, awaiting my death. There was nothing he or I could do about it, which was the worst part. The decision Zeus put forward with the use of his golden scales was one that could not be changed, no matter how hard I begged or pleaded. So I had to go stand there silent and accepting of the fact that my son would die because of Achilles, the great warrior.
How did you feel about the gods' choice to let Achilles be victorious and not Hector? Did you feel that the gods were working against Hector?
I think the gods' choice was really unfair because they relied on some stupid scales to determine who would die. Hector was a nicer and fairer man than Achilles. Achilles is a selfish man who only cares about himself. I really shouldn't be saying this, but even I, the old man who's the king of Troy, believes that Hector is superior to Achilles. And Athena, when she pretended to be my son Deiphobus, in order to fool Hector to go to fight Achilles, She took the side of Achilles along with the other gods. All of the gods seemed to want Achilles to be victorious instead of my son Hector.
Priam, your sons Hector and Paris both played important roles in the Trojan War. Could you comment on the different roles your sons played in the war?
Well, my son Paris is the reason for this war. Let me explain why he is to blame for all of this. When Paris was born, there was a prophecy about him that declared if he lived, he would bring about destruction to Troy. We urged by many to kill him, but we could not. We gave him to the chief's herdsmen and ordered him to kill him. He could not, so he raised him on the most beautiful on his own. As he grew older, the attributes of a royal came to the forefront. He became well known for his honest judgment. So well that Zeus asked him to choose between Athena, Hera, and Aphrodite, as to whom was most beautiful. Aphrodite bribed Paris with the love of Helen, the most beautiful woman in the world. So he chose Aphrodite, and therefore Helen. Aphrodite neglected to mention that Helen was currently married to the king of Sparta. When Paris took Helen and brought her to Troy, the king Menecleus and his brother Agamemnon, king of Achaea, think selfishly. Hector, on the other hand, was one of the greatest warriors Troy has ever known and will ever know. He was the commander of the Trojan army, yet he did not approve of the Greek and Trojan war. He especially did not approve of his brother's stupidity in causing all of this. Many times Hector referred to him as a coward since Paris did not want to fight the Greeks. Anyways, Hector was a powerful warrior. He fought and killed the Greek champion Protesilaus. In another occasion, he had a duel with Ajax, the strongest of all Achaeans. Both my son and the Ajax were adepted warriors, and no victor emerged after the day of fighting. Both admired each other's strength and gave gifts to each other. Ironically, the sword that Hector gave to Ajax would end up being the sword that Ajax used to kill him. The girdle that Ajax gave to Hector would later be used to attach Hector's corpse to Achilles' chariot. One of Hector's greatest mistakes was killing Patroclus, the dearest friend of Achilles. This led to the duel between Achilles and Hector, and eventually lost the demise of Hector. All of Hector's strength could still not defeat Achilles. I mourn the loss of my dear son, but I admire all the great accomplishments he achieved while he was still living.
What happened when you returned to Troy with the body of Hector?
It was a mournful time in Troy when Hector was returned. We were glad to have his body, of course, but it was still a dead body. Achilles had given us 11 days to properly take care of the matter. 9 of those were for mourning, following by a day for the funeral and 1 for the burial. Hector's wife, Andromache, was particularly affected, as was his mother Hecuba. Astyanax was doomed to failure, and Andromache couldn't take it, while my wife Hecuba wept about our favorite son's death at the hands of the merciless Greek Achilles. Helen added that Hector was her favorite sibling. He was quite popular in his service, and that she would rather have died before he did, as Hector and I were the only ones not killed her. The firewood was gathered for 9 days, and the funeral proceeded accordingly. The war then resumed, and we really didn't stand a chance of victory without our greatest warrior, my formidable son Hector.